Welcome to The Talent Journey, a video podcast where a talent outsider like me asks dumb questions so you don't have to. Along the way, we'll learn about the stories of how our talent leader guests got to where they are today and pick up nuggets of wisdom from their experience that you can use in your own journey to become a better recruiter, employer brander, and talent leader. I'm your host, Justin Vajko, and today we're talking with Nate Guggia. Nate is the co-founder and head of brand at Before You Apply, a content platform and creative studio that specializes in helping companies give candidates and insiders look at their teams and cultures. Before You Apply has special expertise creating content for highly technical audiences in extremely competitive markets that helps companies and talent teams hire fast. Nate, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. It's good to be here. Thanks.
So to get us kicked off here, I wanted to ask you, what do you do? What is your job? How are you in the recruiting world? Can you explain it to me like I'm a young child?
We make web pages that companies use to hire really good people.
So Nate, how did you get into this?
Oh, geez, by accident. I think the way that everybody else does. You know, I got out of recruiting and I worked for a couple SaaS startups, and I realized that one of them, I was selling into creative services agencies, like selling the product into agencies. And I realized that I really, really liked creative work and that I wanted to be in services. A little bit after that, I was on the job hunt again, and I came across a company called Job Portraits. So I worked for Job Portraits for a couple of years. And then during that time, one of the founders of that company, Jackson, he and I were working very closely together. We had been bouncing around ideas for a different type of business and a different type of kind of product offering for quite a while. And we ended up, again, by accident, kind of starting our own business within the agency. Grew up pretty quickly from the start. And we saw that there was something viable there, and we ended up spinning it off probably almost 3 years ago into its own business. And so it just kind of it just happened.
It sounds like you didn't really force anything. It just kind of naturally happened from your desire of what you want to be creative, and then that you get that recruiting background, and it sounds like it just kind of happened over time. Nate, has there ever been a time that you failed at something, and what did that shape? How did that shape you, and what did it teach you?
I'm a big natural foodie. I would just make smoothies. I developed this knack. I think it's kind of just natural, where I could just put combinations together and make smoothies. Anyway, at one time I was working at Trader Joe's, at the grocery store. People found out about it. They would ask me to hey, can you bring me a smoothie? I always worked the morning shift. I started making smoothies for people at work. Somebody was you should start a business.
Yeah.
Long story short, I found out about this guy in LA who called himself the milkman, and he would make homemade almond milk and deliver it door to door. And I was like, this is cool. This is before direct to consumer. Yeah. So I started in Salt Lake City. I lived in Utah, and I started a door to door delivery service for homemade smoothies, and I would make them in mason jars. And I would people would order online, and I'd deliver in the morning. Anyway, I ended up turning that business into a retail product with a local food entrepreneur who kind of guided me. I went through an 18-month process, made a shelf product. I got accepted into Whole Foods. It was a really big deal. And I ended up killing the business because I spent a lot of my own money. It was the most amazing experience. I'm super proud of it, but the margins are absolutely terrible for a small producer in that space. And that space even at the time, but more now, at the time, was completely crowded. And it was dominated by brands that were owned by Coca-Cola and stuff like that. There's just no way to compete on margins. They could sell for $3.50 a bottle. I'd have to sell for $9 because there's just I can't do it. Yeah. So I ended up killing the business, and it's still the greatest thing I've ever done professionally from a learning and self-worth standpoint.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. That sounds like that's an amazing journey. And a failure for you. Well, what did that teach you? What did you learn from that? Is there a takeaway you got? I mean, I'm sure there were plenty, right? A lot of little lessons along the way.
Killing something, knowing when to is one thing I learned, and it's okay to do it. Honestly, with that business now that I look back, doing something that's really hard. And that was really hard. Building a shelf stable product in consumer packaged goods has about 100 different elements to it, from packaging to like specific measurements so stuff doesn't spoil to different types of production. I mean, I just learned so much about what it takes for something to get from like an ingredient to a shelf. And like, I did something really hard at a time where like things were really hard personally and financially and all that kind of stuff. And it was like it was just like a cool like moment of grit for me.
Wow. Learned some grit from that. Yeah. It's a rewarding experience for you. I love that you put those together in your mind. I don't think most people would think, oh, that was something that failed or I killed it and that was rewarding, but you clearly have. And that's pretty neat, Nate. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So what's something you wish more people knew about in your world?
I wish more people knew about the benefit of doing hard things. That is something that's extremely important to me. I intentionally do hard things because I know that there's great just like benefit in doing them. Like I exercise really hard. I run up really steep hills on purpose on a regular basis because I know it's really good for me. And it is. It makes me feel amazing when I'm done. And it's hard as hell. I force my son, who's 7. Luckily, he's naturally like inclined to do this, but like I force him to do really hard things. I choose really hard things to do professionally. My life isn't that varied, like to be honest, like 44 with the family. But the things that I do, I've noticed that like they all have this theme. They're like, none of them are easy, but they're set up to not be easy on purpose because then it makes me get comfortable with like uncomfortable stuff. I also realize that like not everybody's built that way. It might just be the way that I'm built. The way that I eat isn't easy. The way that I do, like, it's just all, it's all by design. But I wish more people knew the benefit of that because it's super easy to be comfortable in our world. It's like, it's convenient. Comfort's convenient. And like, I just like continually seek out discomfort for that reason.
So what's one unshakable belief that you will never compromise on that informs the way you do business?
I believe in transparency at like the deepest level. You and I both know that in our industries, but in business in general, that is transparency is something that it feels like it's avoided at all costs. I lean into it heavily. And I think when companies or brands can do that, it changes the way that they interact with the outside world. That company feels like normal, like a person. They feel like they get me, So I think that's just a core belief that I have.
And a lot of companies, can say, "Oh, we're transparent," but they hide certain things. And I mean, and on the flip side, you can't be completely transparent about everything, or you'd be just spilling your guts to everyone about everything.
You so totally can. Yep.
Tell me about that. Like, how do you navigate that?
So I've been faced with this. Jackson and I both have been faced with this. There are things going on with the business that shouldn't be shared with everybody until more is known, let's say. Dude, finances are the biggest thing. Let's just call it out, right?
Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing. So like the business is struggling financially. How soon do you have that conversation with employees? It's like you want to give people a heads up that like, hey, runway's getting short. We might have to make some changes or we got to do some things differently or whatever. But then you also don't want to like scare people if like you're working on some things that are going to make it okay.
Yeah.
And so, that's usually where the transparency, it's always about money. Usually that's like where things stop. It's like, yeah, we can be transparent about all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to money, usually it's like, let's hit the brakes on that. That's usually like the general consensus in business. And so you just have to like balance like being truthful and like taking care of other people by giving them the information that they deserve to have as soon as possible, but also not scaring people unnecessarily if you're giving them some like information too soon. There's information that like business owners or senior leaders are just privy to, and that's just like part of it. And they absorb like all of the stress for the most part, right. And like absorb it so the rest of the company doesn't have to deal with it, so they can all be productive and go about their day and like be okay. And then there comes a time where like that information just like has to be distributed out because like there isn't another option, right? But that's like when I see stuff, not to go off on a tangent, I know we're like short on time, but like when I see people talking about that stuff on like, especially on LinkedIn, I'm just like, you don't understand the amount of pressure and stress that the people at the top are carrying to protect the rest of the crew.
There's a reason leaders are given more compensation, more rewards, is because the amount of stress as leaders. So what's a process or strategy that you found success with recently in your world that you can share with us?
I've known this one for a long time. Social media, if you're active on social media as a like creator, content creator, whatever, you will inevitably go through a period where you're obsessed with engagement. Whether it's like you feel super good because you're getting a lot, or you feel like crap because you're not getting enough. It's all false. I started talking to people a lot. And people would say, oh, I follow your stuff on LinkedIn. I've been following it for a long time. And some of these people have never engaged with my stuff ever. There are so many people who like see your stuff or pass your stuff around or take something away that like never engage at all, because most people don't do that, you know?
Yeah.
And then I realized like there is a benefit to doing it. More people know about my business or more about me or whatever. There's ego involved. I get to do podcasts like this, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's like, I shifted to going like, okay, this is for me. Like this process is for me. It's for me to become a better writer, a better like critical thinker. It's making me like examine my industry, think about it differently. It's making my brain work differently. It's like, this is a benefit for me. And if I'm okay with what I put out, if I feel really good about what I put out, the rest takes care of itself. That is the process or strategy that like I have like carried to this day with LinkedIn. And if I don't put out something that like I believe is like up to my own personal standards, I carry it with me personally. It makes me feel like crap. I'm just like, oh, like that was not my best work.
You got more time to think about it, more time to ruminate on the ideas and really formulate a good opinion about it. What's something underrated in the talent space?
A candidate FAQ.
Break that down for us.
There's a host of questions that candidates have before they apply. There's questions they have in their heads. Yeah. There are boxes that have to be checked before they will schedule a call with a recruiter. We're talking about like hard to hire people who don't apply. They schedule calls with recruiters. That's like how it works. And so if you, knowing this as a recruiter who talks to candidates, that's your job. You talk to candidates, you get this information, putting that information into one asset that is like a Q&A document, question, answer, and using that as an asset, as an enablement asset. So by the time you do get on a phone with a candidate, they have either filtered themselves in or out. You have answered the common questions that happen in a screening call. So if you remove all of that at the top of the funnel with content, or you handle it all at the top of the funnel with content, when you have a conversation with somebody, it's going to be a productive conversation for both people involved. And it's a completely different type of experience. It's like the simplest thing to do. And I wish everybody would do it.
Last question for you, Nate. What's a bit of advice you'd give your younger self?
This is a hard one. I thought about this one a lot. I'm going to be really honest. Like I've been sober for 12, 13 years. I first quit drinking when I was 29, had a little bit of a relapse a couple of years after that. And then I've been sober ever since. So part of me is like, I would tell my younger self to stop drinking, never drink. Who knows, right? Whatever. Like then you would avoid all of the pain that you caused other people and all the pain that you had in your life and all that kind of stuff. But the other side is like, that is part of who I am. And it's a really, really important part of who I am because I learned so much about myself, and I would have never gone through the self-discovery that I needed to go through when I quit to find out who I was and then lead me here. But it's like probably one of the biggest things in my life that has like defined my life.
All that pain gave you the growth and the knowledge and the joy that you now have in your life. So would you want even that to be taken away?
But I think we all have things in our life like that where it's like
100%.
Where it's like, man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Painful experiences. We've all had painful experiences that shaped us into the people we are now, and that never would have shaped us had we not experienced it. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a really good talking point. And thank you, Nate, again for your time. Where can people learn more about you?
You can go to, LinkedIn is where like I'm most active personally, professionally, like, or just business wise. Beforeyouapply.com is our business. Check it out.
All right. Thank you so much, Nate.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Journey podcast with your host, Justin Vajko. To learn more about Dialogue, visit recruitwithdialogue.com.